Hi all, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if this is the first time you are joining me here. I meant to make some more videos throughout June and particularly a reflections video from May, and time just got away with me and it's now the 30th of June and I've done nothing. So I'm going to do a joint May-June reflections video and just talk about the decks and the books and the TV shows and stuff that I did in May and June that you may or may not find interesting, and I'll timestamp so you know which bits you can skip to and stuff. And then I have all the intentions in the world of making more videos in July, and we'll get back on my YouTube game because it's been a bit shocking. So I'm going to jump right in it. I'm going to start off by talking about the decks that I've worked with in May and June. There's only two. So since January, because, so last year and the year before, I generally worked with a deck for a full month because a lot of my decks were new and I wanted to really give them time to work with them. I didn't buy any decks last year, so I was working with decks I already owned but hadn't used yet. And then this year, when the year started, I basically worked with all the decks that I owned for at least a month, and it was more a case of just whatever deck took my fancy. And so I tended to work with one or two different decks a month, normally two or more, decks a month. In May and June, I've only worked with a total of 2 decks because I worked with one for half of May, and then the other one I worked with for the other half of May, and then the whole of June. so I've only got 2 decks to talk about, so this should be reasonably quick. The first deck that I worked with, which I've worked with before, is Tarot of the Divine by Yoshi Yoshitani. This is a deck that has been inspired by stories, myths and legends and folk tales from around the world. The work and the research that has gone into this deck is incredible, and there really are at least 1 or 2 cards from so many different places around the world with different stories. It's a really pretty deck. It's really beautiful. It's got some really interesting stories in it. It's got some stories that I recognize, some stories that I don't recognize at all. The cardstock is beautiful. I've really enjoyed working with it, but it's not a favorite for me. It's just a deck that I like but I don't love, and I'll continue to work with, but it won't necessarily be the first deck I go for. There are some things about the deck that I don't love. So there's some style choices that in the way that the artwork's depicted that I don't necessarily love. One example would be the 4 of Swords, which I'm never going to be able to find now. But the 4 of Swords to me is a card that is about rest, right? It's about having faced loads of challenges and now taking a rest while you recuperate and you get your energy back, and you recognize that you can't keep pushing through and that kind of thing. And it's very much that kind of meaning for me. This is the card for the 4 of Swords, and I don't get any of that from this card. And it's a style choice. I don't particularly like the way that card is depicted. It doesn't work for me. I'm sure there are lots of people it does work for. So in terms of the cards, those are the kind of issues that I had. There were certain cards where I didn't love the way that they'd chosen to depict that particular card. It just didn't work for me. But there were also cards that I loved, and a lot of the cards I loved, it was because I recognised the story in them. So I think it's the 5 of Pentacles is the little match girl. And it's a story that I love, that I've known for a very long time. I was immediately able to recognise it. Strength I love because it's Celtic, it's got a real Scottish feel, and so I really love that one of my favourite cards in the deck is also from the country of my ancestors. So I really liked that. There was lots of things I liked about the deck. There were a couple of things I didn't like about the deck. Overall, it's a fun deck to use. It's easy enough to connect with. It's still very RWS, even though it's individual myths and stories. It still has a real RWS feel, which personally I love. My one complaint, and it's not even really a complaint, it's just, again, a personal thing, is the guidebook. So the guidebook doesn't tell you anything about the story. It tells you the name of the story and it tells you where it's from. So for example, the Two of Cups is Enkidu and Gilgamesh. I don't think I've said the first name right. And that's from Iraq, and it's a Sumerian myth, so it's from Sumerian mythology. And that's all it tells you. Now I know, because I'm sure I'm going to get comments about this if I don't say it, I know that there is another book that you can buy that's a bigger book that is actually the stories. And I don't begrudge anybody making extra money, because let's be honest, the only reason why you would separate them out like that is to have two lots of money coming in. At least that's the only reason I can think of why you would separate them out. And I think that's a perfectly valid reason. But from a personal, selfish point of view, I don't want to have to buy another book in order to really understand the cards that are in the deck that I've just bought. And I don't want to have to spend lots of time on Google, which was the other option, looking up stories for the cards that I've just bought so that I can get a deeper understanding of what they mean. I'm sure, again, there are lots of people who are doing that and have really enjoyed that, and it's really added to the deck for them. I just don't have the time for that. I just don't have the time for that. So personally, I would have much preferred more information about each of the stories in the book that came with the deck. So that's my only real complaint, but otherwise really enjoyed working with it. Reads really well. Definitely will use it again. The other deck that I used, I'm not going to review for a couple of reasons. One, because it's not available for sale and I don't want to go on too much about it, and then people want it and not be able to have it. And two, it's because I was involved in the creation of this deck, and reviewing the deck that you were involved in making just feels a little bit tacky, so I'm not going to do that. But it was the Bangtan Tarot that I made with Sarah from Sunset Bow Tarot and Julie from Peekaboo Rose. I will link in the description box or up here somewhere, or however it works, I can't remember, it's been that long, the two videos that we did on Sarah's channel, or we didn't do the two videos on Sarah's channel. One is the three of us discussing the deck and the process and how it all came about. And then the other one is Sarah doing a very intensive walkthrough of the cards and explaining more about why we picked the cards that we did and that kind of thing. For anyone who hasn't seen it and is interested, it is a BTS deck, for anyone who doesn't know. And I used this for half of May and all of June. I'm not going to review it other than to say I freaking love it, obviously. It makes me very happy. Working with this deck just makes me very happy. I get to look at pictures of BTS every day, and not only that, but it reads really, really well. Like, it reads really well. It reads like a tarot deck. Now, I am aware enough to say that it's possible that that is because I was so involved in the making of the deck that I already understand each card and the meaning behind each card and the reasons behind each card, and already have that connection with it, and that's why it reads so well for me. But I would also argue that I just think it's a deck that would read fairly well for anybody who picked it up, to be fair. But yeah, so that's the other deck that I worked with for the majority of the last 2 months, because I love it and I never want to stop working with it. Although I am going to stop working with it and work with something else in July, because I have a couple of decks, July and August, that I really want to work with because they're new. So yeah. So over the 2 months, I'll talk about books now. Over the last couple of months, I've read 8 books in total. I'm not going to talk about all of them because we would be here forever and nobody needs to hear about every book that I read. But I will tell you about some of them. So if you're interested, I am on Goodreads, so you can go and check me out on Goodreads, and it will give you a list of the books that I have read. And I'm also sharing the books at the moment on Instagram just because I want to. Just because I want to. And so it shows the books that I've read this year so far for anyone who's interested. But I read quite a bit of sci-fi this month. A mixture of sci-fi. So I read The Three Body Problem by Liu Cixin, I think is how you say it, or Leo Cixin. It's a book that was written in Chinese. He's Chinese, so it's a Chinese story that's been translated into English. Very heavy sci-fi, real hard sci-fi. Lots of, I'm going to tell you how the science works rather than just telling you the story, which I don't need because I don't really understand any of that anyway, if I'm completely honest. A lot of it went over my head, but the plot is really good. And it's also the first book that I've read which is like first contact with aliens sci-fi, and I wasn't sure if I would like that. I wasn't sure if that would be my thing, but I really did enjoy it, and I'm definitely going to read the other two at some point. So I had a really good month, actually. I didn't DNF any books, and I don't think I gave any books under 4 stars or 3.5 stars. I finished the Broken Earth trilogy. So in May I read book 2, which is The Obelisk Gate, and in June I read book 3, which is The Stone Sky. That's the series by N.K. Jemisin, which is set in like a post-apocalyptic world where they have seasons, and they have the 5th season, which is normally a period of time which is quite difficult, and you're following, in the first book you're following 3 different characters over 3 different timelines, 1 in the past, or 2 in the past and 1 in the present, I believe. Yes. And one of the chapters, one of the perspectives is written in second person, which I've never read in a book before. So that's when it's, you know, it's for those who don't know, and I'm assuming everybody knows, but just in case, it's you did this and you said that and you went there. So rather than I or they, it's you. That's unusual in a novel. Novels normally aren't written that way. And I struggled with it more in the first book. In the second and the third book, I felt totally comfortable with it and found it a really easy read. It's one of my favourite series that I've read ever. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the whole series. I don't even think there was a book that I liked less than the other books. I enjoyed them all. Highly recommend it. It's kind of, it is sci-fi, I would say, because I feel like it's set on our planet, but in the future. And it's in the first book, everything is very science. It can all be explained with science, but I do think it's probably sci-fi fantasy. There is that crossover there. But I would definitely categorize it in sci-fi and fantasy, because I think it has a bit of both. But there are probably other people who will feel differently about that. I read a Stephen King. I read a Stephen King every year. I read Later by Stephen King, which is a new one, which is a ghost story and is really short. It's like 200 pages, and it was typical Stephen King. It was okay. I liked it. I always enjoy Stephen King, but it definitely wasn't my favourite by him. What else did I read that might be of interest? So I read Kim Jae-young, born 1982, by Cho Namju, which is a South Korean author. It's a South Korean book written in like 2016, I think. And this again has been translated into English. And it is a book that was quite controversial when it came out in South Korea. It kind of sparked in many ways their Me Too movement in South Korea, or it came out around that time when all that was happening, and you know, there was other things going on as well, I'm sure, but it was a really interesting read for me because I was also born in 1982. So the character that you're following, Kim Jae-young, is my age, is a woman of my age, and so it starts in the present and then it goes right back to when she's a child and kind of works her way back up to the present. And it was really interesting to see that contrast between her life growing up and mine, and how there were some real obvious differences, where I am very grateful in many ways that I grew up in a country that's so much less conservative and further forward, I think, in terms of feminism than South Korea was, particularly in the 80s and 90s. But also there were so many things that actually weren't that different at all, and I could recognize within my own life and my own upbringing. So that was really interesting to see that kind of dichotomy between how different being a woman in South Korea, or a young girl and growing into a woman in South Korea, was in the 80s and 90s from being in that same position in the 80s and 90s in the UK, but also how similar some of those experiences were. And it makes you realize that some of those experiences are universal for women, you know, across the world. So it was good. It was again, it's very short. The ending, oh my God. The ending actually made me do that. It actually made me go, oh my God, in like sheer frustration. The very last sentence, like there's just a sentence and and then the book ends and it's like, oh my God. It was sheer frustration. I would highly recommend it. It was very, very good, very much worth a read. Yeah, so those are the books that I really wanted to talk about. There were other books that I read that I enjoyed. I enjoyed everything I read in May and June. I was very lucky in May and June that I made some really good choices and pretty much enjoyed everything that I read. But those are the ones I wanted to mention. What did I watch? Well, in May I watched Eurovision. So if you're outside of Europe or Australia and you don't know, Eurovision happens every year. It's a music contest. It happens every year. The UK puts a lot of money into this broadcasting corporation, so we are always guaranteed a place in the final. We're one of 4 countries that are always guaranteed a place in the final. And I've watched it, like, there's huge nostalgia around this program for me because I've watched it every year for pretty much as long as I can remember. I might have missed the odd year here and there, but I grew up on the Eurovision. It was fun. I went to my friends, we had a party, we had a clipboard so we could score all the different artists and the different acts. It was really good this year. It wasn't on last year, obviously, because of COVID. And so they did a COVID secure final this year. And it was just like, it's like every single country pretty much upped their game this year, and there were so many good entrants and there were so many choices for who you wanted to win. I liked Italy's song. It wasn't my favorite. Italy won, spoiler. It wasn't my favorite, but it was in my top 5, and so I was quite happy with the result. England, or the UK, sorry, were just done dirty again. The rest of Europe do not like us. It's very clear they don't like us. We will never again be awarded points in the Eurovision, I don't think. But, you know, it is what it is. It wasn't a bad entrance. I didn't think we put in a bad entry. I certainly don't think it deserved 0 points. But we are where we are. So what can you do? So I watched that. I also watched Shadow and Bone on Netflix. I have never read any of these books. I'm really hit and miss with YA generally, as anybody who knows me and has watched my channel for a while will know. But I thought I would give it a go because it sounds like my kind of thing, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I'm really pleased to hear it's got a season 2. I'll definitely watch season 2 when it comes out. I really loved the crow characters, and so I have actually downloaded on my Kindle the Six of Crows duology, because I found those characters so much more interesting, and I will be reading those books. But yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it. We'll definitely watch season 2. Probably won't read the books, because I know that the books are first person perspective, and I didn't love the character overly whose perspective you follow, and I don't really like YA. Like, that's one of the reasons I don't like YA, is because I'm not really keen on that first person perspective thing, so I probably won't read them. And at the moment I've got one episode to watch of season 1, and then I'm done with season 1, and season 2 is also already on Netflix, so I'll go into season 2. And that's of a program called Kingdom, which is a Korean program. It's set in the Joseon dynasty, so the Korean Middle Ages, and it's about zombies, basically. The first episode was quite slow, and I really wasn't sure if I would like it, but now I'm hooked. And each episode is like 55 minutes long, and there's 6 in a series, so it's, you know, it's a commitment. I can only do one episode, and then I have to stop. I cannot binge watch it because it's way too fucking stressful. Like, way too stressful. I find it an incredibly stressful watch most of the time. It's really hard to sit through, but it's just so good. I'm just hooked. I'm completely and utterly invested now, and so I have to see it through. Yeah, Korean zombies are fucking terrifying. They move so fast. Like, I'm used to zombies that shamble around and just are a bit annoying. I wouldn't want to meet one, but, you know, in general, as long as you run, you probably be okay. Nope. Korean zombies, they do everything at speed. And I knew that because I've seen Train to Busan, so I knew that was normal for the zombie genre within Korea. But yeah, it's really, really stressful when there's hundreds of them and they're all running and the main characters are running and everybody's running, and it's really like high intensity. And every so often I have to pause it just to catch my breath, and also because it's really difficult to keep up with the subtitles sometimes, and when I'm really highly stressed out about what's happening. So, but it's good. It's really, really good. If you like horror, if you like zombie drama stuff, and you can handle the subtitles, definitely give it a go. Definitely. Yeah, so other stuff, I bought a couple of new decks. So the Bangtan Tarot actually arrived in May. We did all the work for it in April, but I got it in May. I also bought I received, because I backed it last year, but I received my Tarot Renard. I do have a walkthrough of this, so I'm not going to go into too much detail here now. And I haven't used it yet. I'm intending to use it. This is the deck I'm intending to work with in July. So I've done a deck interview with it, and I've shuffled it and drawn some random cards and stuff, but I haven't really committed to it yet. So that's my plan for July. I love it. I'm not, like, the cardstock is not my favourite. It's too thick for me. I have arthritic hands and fingers. Shuffling this deck is a nightmare. But art-wise, I just think it's so utterly breathtakingly beautiful. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to working with it, actually. And that was one deck that I got in May. In May, I also bought the Believe in Your Own Magic Oracle deck by Amanda Lovelace. This was on my wish list before it was released, and then for whatever reason, because I wasn't buying decks last year, I didn't buy it. And then it's been a while since I've actually started buying decks again this year, because I've had other stuff going on. And I finally, it's not very expensive, and it's a deck that I've seen around. I remember Lisa at Sportive Tarot did a walkthrough of it last year, and I knew it was a deck I was going to get. I've always known it was a deck I was going to have, so I went ahead and got it this month, well, in May. And I've pulled the odd card with it and just given myself like a message for the day, and I'm really, like, I really love it. I just love it a lot. So I'm very happy with that. Other decks, the other two of the decks I got in June. So I finally managed to get my hands on the Cup of Contemplation cards by Julie from Peekaboo Rose. This has been, most of her decks are on my list, actually. And this one has been on my list for a little while. And I finally had the resources to go ahead and hit buy. And it's such a great little deck, right? And I don't use it every day necessarily, but like once a week even, I draw a card and then I actually do contemplate by journaling whatever the question is that I get. So it's really helping me connect with my journaling practice, and also just really getting me to think about things in a different way, and things that I might not normally have thought about otherwise. So I'm really loving this. I love the colours. I just love it. I love it all. I love it. Hello. Hi. No, I'm busy. You have to wait. Stop it. And then the other deck that I bought in June, which has been one that I've thought about for a very long time, and it was out of print, and I'd seen it and I thought maybe, then it came back in print and I was like, oh, maybe, and I kept going to the website and having a look and couldn't really make up my mind. And then Sarah at Sunset Bow Tarot did a video where she did like a comparison between the first edition and the second edition, and I just thought, you know what, I really like it. It's very different from anything I've ever used or anything I own, but I'm gonna do it. And that is the Tildwick Tarot. It came really quick. I ordered it on the Bank Holiday Monday and it was here by the Wednesday. So I don't have any decks that don't have people or animals or something in them. I don't have any decks like this. This is very unique. I've done a deck interview with it, which was really interesting and pretty intense. And I'm probably going to work with this in August, and I'm really excited about seeing where it takes me, because it's so different than anything I'm used to. I haven't done a walkthrough because there's so many walkthroughs of this deck and it's so well known, but if people want me to, I will do. Just leave me a comment below and I'll certainly do that. But I try not to do walkthroughs of decks that have been around for a while, because there are already so many good ones out there if you are looking for that. So yeah, I'm really excited anyway to work with that in probably August. And that is pretty much it. I think the only other things that I really did that's worth a mention in May was I took part this year in Tarathon. Well, Julie at Peekaboo Rose took part in Tarathon, and Sarah and I joined her on her channel for an hour, and we did 3 girls, 1 deck, where we basically talked about a deck that 2 of us owned and 1 of us didn't, and we talked about why we love it and why we think the other person should have it, and they talked about why they didn't like it, and we kind of had a back and forth conversation about our likes and dislikes and difference of opinions about different decks. It was our peer pressure hour, that's what we were calling it. It was a lot of fun. We had like people in the chat joining in and asking questions, and you know, sharing their likes and dislikes about different decks and their thoughts. It was brilliant. Really enjoyed it. We had a lot of comments afterwards about how it would make a great series, and so we are in the process of planning our next live. We are going to do it again. We're going to do it on my channel this time, and it will be live. It will be on a Saturday evening around 6 o'clock in a couple of weeks, but there'll be more information coming out about that very shortly, so keep an eye out for that if that's something that you're interested in. And other than that, I really didn't do very much. Although I feel like I mean, I've talked for like 30 minutes, so I've obviously done loads, but nothing that involved going out or seeing anyone or having a life. So that was me. That's kind of my May and June. Ready for July. Ready for the second half of the year. We're hopefully kind of coming completely out of like lockdown and restrictions and stuff in July, in time for summer. I've got time away booked towards the end of the year, and other stuff. So I'm really looking forward to the second half of this year. Last year was shit. The first half of this year was really busy and quite stressful. So I'm hoping that the second half of 2021 is going to be good. I will definitely be back with more videos in July. I thank you for sticking with me if you have done through this video. If you do have any videos in particular you would like me to make, let me know in the comments below. And I will see you all very soon for another one. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.